everyone. This is Alex. It's been a while since I last checked in. I spent the whole month of July here in Pereira, Colombia. At the end of the month, I went back home for a short visit, but soon after I returned. And when I came back, I discovered something interesting. There was a traveling amusement park here in town called Looping Park. I went there on a Colombian holiday, which also happened to be the last week of the fair. When I arrived around 4 p.m., the place was quiet. Hardly anyone was there. But by 6 p.m., the park was full of people, crowds everywhere. You know, I realized it had been more than 10 years since I last visited an amusement park, and probably 30 years since I last rode a roller coaster. Back then, I went with my girlfriend, her friend, and my junior at Lotte World in Seoul, Korea. That was my last memory of a roller coaster. This time, I decided to ride again. I tried a couple of the stronger rides, and honestly, it was scary. Not as terrifying as I remembered from 30 years ago. The rides here are smaller, the roller coasters are shorter, and the spinning rides don't go as high. I would say maybe about half as intense, but still, after such a long time, it felt overwhelming. I stood there thinking, should I ride it or not? The ticket prices were very affordable. I bought a lot of tickets, about $10 per person, and that was more than enough to enjoy many rides. But the problem was that by the time the crowds came, the lines were way too long, so I couldn't use all my tickets. Instead, I tried some games, like throwing a ball into a basket. But just like in Korea or the US, those games are nearly impossible to win. Some rides looked way too scary for me. Across from where I was, I saw a giant rainbow-colored ride spinning high in the air. People who rode it all said it was terrifying. I couldn't dare to try it. Probably the scariest one in the park. Pereira is actually a big city, around 3 million people if you include the surrounding areas. That's much larger than cities like Philadelphia. But despite being such a large city, it doesn't have a permanent amusement park. So when something like Looping Park comes, it's a big deal. Maybe for many people here, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to ride these attractions. Nearby Pereira, there are also tourist destinations worth visiting. There's Salento, a beautiful coffee town, and the Parque del Café, or Coffee Park, which is a mix of rides, cultural shows, and coffee-related attractions. From Pereira, it's only about a 30-minute drive, but still, because of transportation, not too many people go. When I visited, it wasn't too crowded, but it was worth it. The scenery, the food, and the cultural experience of seeing how coffee is grown and processed. Back to the amusement park, later in the evening, I finally tried the roller coaster. Compared to big parks in the US or Korea, it wasn't very high or very long, but it still had loops, 360-degree turns, and all the basics. It cost 3 tickets per ride, but since it was the last day, they had a half-price deal. 2 people could ride with just 3 tickets. Not bad. Watching this traveling amusement park set up in a city surrounded by mountains, I thought, of course, for them, it's a business. But for the people here, it brings so much happiness and excitement. It might not serve thousands of people a day, but over a month, maybe 30,000 people get to experience it. Out of 3 million residents, that's just about 1%. For most people, this may truly be a rare, unforgettable experience. Later, I walked around to check out the food stands. To be honest, the food wasn't very good. The portions were small, the quality was poor, and the prices were a bit high compared to local standards. A hot dog was almost $4, which is cheap in the US, but expensive here. Maybe that's why, even though there were so many people in the park, not many were buying food. Now let me talk about my daily life here in Pereira. I've been here for about 2 months now, without traveling much outside the city. My main purpose is to experience what it might be like to actually live here, maybe even after retirement. My daily routine looks like this. In the morning, I do CrossFit from 6:30. Recently, there has been a festival here. I don't know exactly what it's called, but there were parades and dancing in the streets. Even my dance school participated, and I saw it on Instagram. On Friday, I went out and joined. It was raining heavily, so there weren't many people, but I still had fun, dancing, eating, and drinking. For me, Pereira has become a kind of paradise, a place where I can relax, enjoy life, and learn what makes me happy. Still, I don't want to live here forever. I love the US as well. My dream is to live part-time in both countries, maybe 6 months here, 6 months there, or a few months back and forth. That way I can enjoy the best of both worlds. This trip has been very meaningful for me. It gave me time to think about my future, to plan how I want to live the next 50 or maybe even 100 years of my life. Of course, plans will change, and I'll make mistakes along the way, but I feel like I now have a clearer picture of how I want to live happily. Pereira also made me reflect on happiness itself. What does it mean to be happy? After living in Korea and the US, I realized that happiness takes different forms in different places. In Colombia, happiness feels simple.
Let's go!
People don't need big achievements or fancy things. They just enjoy time with friends, music, dancing, and small daily pleasures. For me, happiness here comes from relationships, greeting people at the gym, talking with classmates at the dance school, sharing small conversations. Even though my Spanish isn't perfect, the connections feel real. Yes, money is part of it. I pay for classes and services, and that starts the relationship. But over time, those interactions turn into genuine connections. That's where the happiness comes from. Small but meaningful human connections. One of the highlights of my visit was watching a circus. Believe it or not, this was my very first time seeing a circus live. I had no expectations, but it turned out to be fun and amazing. It wasn't as spectacular as what you see on TV, but seeing it live in front of me was exciting. Most of the show was performed by what I think was a family, a man, a woman, and 2 children. They worked hard, they trained hard, and watching their effort made me feel
comprar aqui.